which we are going to have a conversation now, I think. Calling him right now. Oh, wait, I'm not going to be able to hear. Wait. Hold on, I need to. 1 second. I can't hear you right now because I need to change your audio. Output device. Okay, boom. All right, hello?
Hey, what's up? Let me get my video right now. You could be able to see me. I like to see people face to face. All right.
Wait, are you going to turn on video? I want to put your video on. You have video?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. Wait.
No, you got to do OBS studio mode.
No, I literally just fucking I just plugged my camera into this. Oh shit! No, I'm tripping.
You have to click on your virtual camera inside of OBS first.
No, I usually just deactivate the camera on OBS. Fuck that, and I just show the whole thing. All right. So what do I do?
This is two boomers trying to figure out Discord. It's gonna be hard.
Bro, you know how to use this shit way more than me.
No, I don't. I don't. Everyone makes fun of me for it. I actually don't at all. All right, boom.
You putting them hours in on Twitch, bro. I'm telling you, like I would imagine like you're like a tech, you know what I mean, guru almost.
No,
all right,
I wish.
Let me see what else. Okay, so stream. I'm just gonna just throw Discord on here, so just calm down. I'll be fine. Yeah. So
all right.
there you see me.
I can see you. I'm good. So what happened? You were talking about Kanye West, and you, I guess someone in the chat brought me up, and you were upset about my words, with respect to the Channel 5 interview that you conducted.
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily upset. I said that you're someone who I watch, but I felt you were out of touch in terms of your commentary on that particular clip. And it made me look at you in a different way because I've watched you comment on stuff that I'm less knowledgeable on. And when I've watched you comment on things, if I didn't have enough time to do my own independent research, I always took you at face value, right? And then when you commented on that, it was so surface level that I felt I was like, damn, maybe this whole time I'm watching this, because I watch you a lot, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Again, we're all creators. We probably watch certain stuff of each other, right? And I'm like, damn, maybe I'm just kind of, you're really popular at the moment. I'm buying too much into the sauce of, you're really reasonable. And that's why I usually watch you. Like, he's reasonable, rational, and rational actually. And he's usually just serving us straight. And then when I watched you do the commentary on the Channel 5 stuff, and you were speaking along the lines of not only media in hip hop, but you were speaking about, the dynamics of even a place like Chicago. Again, I looked at it, I was like, man, I think he lacked the context, and I never thought he was the person to be very firm in an opinion without having an abundance of support and facts.
What in particular? What was some of my statements that you didn't agree with? Like maybe as far as like how it pertains to you might not agree with that, but as far as violence in Chicago, I've always maintained the same position that I've maintained across the board on white supremacy, white supremacist institutions, and more importantly, the consequences on black people, black population, and how the main reason is not rap music, but instead the main reason has always been the socioeconomic conditions that black people were have faced historically.
And we don't disagree there. So that's not what we're disagreeing. And
but that was my overarching point on the Channel 5 conversation across the board.
No, 100%, right? And by the way, I agree with this. So we're starting off at a point of agreement where I'm like, I agree with that point you said, and I think if that's your overarching point of view on it, I agree. This is where I'll disagree, right? I disagree once we get into the dynamics of now an existing industry that is capitalizing off of the stories
Wait, I'm turning on my
and
camera
also the plight of
so you can see me as
great.
well.
All right, perfect. So my whole thing was once we get into the point where we're talking about an industry. So again, I'm not just talking about just a community. Now we're talking about the music industry and how it actually, if you think about hip hop, it not only weaponizes certain things from certain type of environments, it also monetizes it, right? And when we think about even drill music, it's not just simple as, you know, I felt the broad brush that was painted and painted incorrectly. You know, I spoke to even Adam 22. We've had multiple back and forths about this. Adam 22 said he even spoke to Andrew might be fucking
Andrew Callahan.
Callahan. Okay, great. And he admitted that maybe the portrayal wasn't all the way fair in itself because I think the majority of people who watched that thought that there was an exterior and outside force that was probably, you know, inciting, agitating, and also being the beneficiary of what that violence was in that inner city community.
Record labels.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're saying that now, but it felt
No, I said that back then as well. It's a position that I've talked about quite frequently, which is that I think that record label executives and record labels in general are motivated by profit and therefore do not care about black bodies in the streets, especially when time and time again, when an artist, when a young black artist pops off, if they go to prison, their records sell more. If they pop off and die, even after that, the record label will oftentimes engage in actions that are really fucked up and exploitative and continue to release their music. And that in and of itself, I think is a way bigger problem. But, you know, I still think that ultimately record labels' profit-seeking behavior in this regard is not helpful, but overall, the main problem is always going to be material conditions.
And by the way, I don't think anytime you see someone covering that, and by the way, I've always said, I just interviewed a rapper who's from the environment. I just dropped the podcast on Spotify, G Herbo. And I did tell him, you know, my coverage of, you know, that era of quote unquote drill music was definitely very amateur in itself. And obviously, if you ask me now if I could do things better or do things different, of course, you know, you probably, if I look back at like your commentary 5 years ago, or let's say I go back 7 years ago, maybe you'd be like, yo, even if you would have the same fundamental stance, you probably wouldn't go about it the same way, given the effect that you would have knowing the platform that you have now, right? Is that fair?
I think that, I mean, my statements have been pretty consistent overall. But I did have opinions that I no longer agree with now, if that's what you're saying, like, which I have used as a opportunity to educate people time and time again, because I think that a lot of people will start off on the wrong foot. You know, bigoted takes. Like I've been very open about this. Like, I have a pretty trans positive community, probably the largest, you know, trans space that is on the internet. But I had transphobic opinions, misogynistic opinions in the past that are well documented. And I've used that always to say, look, I'm a product of my environment. I'm a product of my social conditioning. And just like everybody else is. And I always use that as an educational opportunity for others that, like, I've changed my perspective and you can as well. This level of like empathetic thinking I extend to the criminal justice system, which I think is a genuine problem in America. But overall, I recognize that some of the things I said were wrong, and have used that as an opportunity to educate others into not feeling that way either, or not even feeling trapped because they have said certain things in the past. However, having said that, that also comes with the recognition of saying that I was wrong. Do you feel like you were wrong about your coverage of Chirac?
And this is where I said that I felt like you were only going by the documentary, right? Because of anyone who's really covered any part of rap culture, right? And I mean I have history here to go with, right? We could go back to the source. We could go back to Double XL covering the beef between Tupac and Biggie, right? Many people in the culture believe they're the one who created this East Coast, West Coast war that made many artists feel like they have to be a part of it or had to do something, right? Never took a responsibility. When it came to the whole Chicago thing, I've always said, hey, listen, I was young at the moment. I saw these guys calling themselves demons and savages. I made up a couple nicknames for them, and I was trying to showcase the ridiculousness through satire. That's very true. And granted, where my platform grew to, and also where that even platform at the time, which wasn't mainstream, but still it was, it was influential. Where that grew to, looking back on it on hindsight, I've always said this. I'm the first person to say I throw my hat into the ring to say there's shared responsibility in terms of accountability that should be taken. I've always been saying, by the way, the platform Clubhouse. I've been on there multiple times talking to many people who are in the inner city communities from Chicago, acknowledging, hey, listen, maybe this wasn't intended, but I was a part of blah blah blah. I've always just said I feel like people like the convenient scapegoat. And I've always just said, if you go up that ladder of the people who really benefit from it back then or now, right? Lil Durk he's selling a billion records, or he's
Yeah,
getting a
but
billion streams.
Lil Durk is like the one person. Don't you agree? Is the one person who should be making money, talking about his own personal experience and his own personal development and upbringing. We're talking about other factors that then go in and make money off of his labor, off of his art, off of him communicating his own personal experiences. And record labels are one element here. And then another is, like you said, XXL magazine with respect to like Biggie and Pac.
Well, I don't mean to cut you off, but we have to stay on that point because it does become at a certain point, and this is why this conversation. So that's why I said, like, you have to be in the culture to see what's going on. What we're talking about.
I'm not in the culture. I mean, that's not something that I mean, that's something that I readily admit. I've never even been to Chicago. I don't think you have been. I don't think you were in the streets of Chicago while you were covering Chicago. But that's besides the point. You know more than I do about the culture, for sure.
Okay, but hear what I'm trying to say. What we're talking about. Keep in mind, and I always have to put a time and date to it, right? When I did the war in Chirac, quote unquote, I did it from. It's a 2014 to 2017 thing, right? We're in 2022, 5 years actually after I've ever done it. When I mentioned Durk, Lil Durk is currently making songs that's inciting and also mocking deaths of people that's happened as recent as like 8 months ago. So I hear this. Why I say you're out of touch, because if you could say that what I did 5 years ago, which literally has way less of an impact than what a Lil Durk would do, and you're like, oh well, you shouldn't do it. Lil Durk is a millionaire. He's made at least, listen, just off raw estimation, maybe 100 million. He's not in the same situations anymore. This is not Lil Durk who's like really in these situations of choice. This is someone who knows what sells. This is someone who knows what marketing is. This is someone who's been dropped from a record label, who's tried different methods of trying to making it, and realize that, hey, what people like is when I exploit and I sing about bloodthirsty music. And even if it means inciting stuff that feds just locked up somebody literally like 8 months ago for a murder of a very popular rapper, he's inciting it. He's dissing people. So again, I ask you, and I'm like, well, is there no blame to be laid to the rapper's feet who's made it? We're not talking about these. One of the regrets I always said about the war in Chirac, there were kids. They didn't have no resources. They were broke. They were just trying to make it. We're talking about guys who realize that they're signing $50 million record deals, and it's incentivized for them to keep propelling and keep propagating that violence through their music today. They still do it, and that's why I say you would be out of touch, because Could you sit here and cognizantly say, "Wow, this guy is living in the upper echelon of Atlanta and also Beverly Hills, he should be still with his huge platform, which is, when I mean exponentially, 10, 20, maybe 100 or 200 times more than Academics, still fueling the rap beef, still fueling the violence from where he came from. But why is he doing it? It's straight for profit at this point, because it's not out of necessity. He doesn't live there anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's still his culture. It's still his background. I think that ultimately the point I was always trying to make is that music in and of itself is just a product of the experiences that you have, right? Culture is like a mirror. You can try, if your mirror has smudge on it, and you can try to clean that mirror. Ultimately, whatever is reflecting back from that mirror is whatever is the reality. And what I mean by that is, Lil Durk is simply making a profit or rapping about his own personal experiences. Okay, regardless of his actions, I think that the impact that music has is marginal, just like the impact that you have is marginal in your coverage. Okay, which was my point overall. My point always was that what is infinitely more prescient, what is infinitely more important with respect to violence in the streets, gang violence, or any kind of violent activity happening as a product of people's existences, as a product of people's experiences, is happening as a consequence of inadequate funding, happening as a consequence of redlining, happening as a consequence of historic and contemporary white supremacy. This is what I mean when I say the material conditions are infinitely more important, which is precisely what I was mentioning in that conversation with you as well.
Wait, I'm not disagreeing. I'm talking about lame blame, because that's where we're having these conversations. What some people think is in post. You get what I mean? Like, for example, that's why I said your lack of understanding of what's going on. That drill music these days is probably one of the top 3 most prevalent and most popular and most lucrative type of music that any type of, and it's spread to the UK, Toronto, Jacksonville. It's in New York. So when I say that to you, do you really think that it's a fair place of blame, especially even these days, right? Philly has the worst murder rate. You can look it up by capita currently, right? They're also getting into this same type of style. What I did with the war in Chirac ended in 2017. Lil Durk just got a multi-platinum record where he's making fun of another popular rapper who just died last year. Lil Durk is way up. He is not in the position of these people who you're trying to act like, oh, they're victims of circumstances. These people are now, they're the villains of opportunity, where they're like, yo, hey, so that's why I always look at people who are misinformed. I said, well, if we're going to have the proper conversation, number one, I never started it, right? Granted, did I say I have zero blame to take? I think I took some blame even in this, and I've always publicly said it. I said everybody who has thought about when it comes to drill music does not want to have the real discussion. Because when you're saying it's part of Lil Durk's story, what part of Lil Durk's story now, when he's rapping about all these millions that he has and all the things he could do financially, and he's in Beverly Hills, what part of that has to do with him inciting a gang war? And this is a gang war, my brother. When you sit here and you make a song called Should Have Ducked, and you know that one of the biggest rappers who was upcoming was called FBG Duck, and you're making fun of his death. That's where the feds just arrested 3 people, well, actually more than 3, about 4 to 5 people from O Block, basically saying these guys were responsible for their death. If you think that it starts or it stops with Academics, you're just not like.
But I don't think that, and I think I've been trying to hammer on this point over and over again. I don't think you are as relevant as you think I said you were in this conversation as it pertains to beefing up gang violence. In the video itself, I have talked about how it was unhelpful. and you recognize that as well. Okay, but ultimately, the real relevant component with respect to violence is always going to be material conditions. That is the larger overarching issue, and I think that you and I probably agree on that as well. There are responsible parties that are not from these areas that are also taking advantage of the situation and making money off of this kind of back and forth violence, and in certain instances, quite literally instigating it. But if the actors that are instigating it are people like Lil Durk, well, they're still from these communities. They still have family members in these communities. They still have a direct relationship with these communities. So when they are making art, when they're making art about their own personal experiences, it might have an incendiary or inciting component to it, right? It might. And I'm sure you know better than I do about Lil Durk's discography.
I'm gonna extrapolate. You saying that is kind of like, you know, when Kanye's jumping out saying like, yo, he's still a slave, or when he's going at Jewish people. Like, essentially, these guys are privileged guys who we're talking about now. Like you keep saying.
I think Kanye has a little bit more privilege than Lil Durk does. Like proximity wise, like Lil Durk is closer to O Block than Kanye is to his original beginnings in Chicago. I mean, he's a billionaire. I think that, you know, both of those statements could be true, but there is definitely a larger impact on one.
Hold on, and this is where I gotta educate you again, right? Lil Durk still raps about a young kid, right, who lost his life in Chicago, that had no resources like him, never made it out, nothing like that. A kid named Tuka literally uses him as a punchline to make his songs hot and to make himself seem more relative to his fan base, to make it seem like he's in Chicago. He's not in Chicago. He's not running the same blocks. And you know what people do when they hear that? Because I had to sit and listen to the mother of FBG Doug cry to me and say, why won't you show the other side of it? Because these guys are getting millions. These guys are running up millions off of a situation.
But it's their story though, right? Like, you understand, like, no matter how much you try to remove Lil Durk, say he lives in Beverly Hills or whatever, those are his real experiences, real lived experiences that originally is what made Lil Durk. So ultimately, if everyone is exploiting a situation, if there's one party that is like the most adequate to exploit the situation, it's still always going to be someone like Lil Durk. So that's my take overall.
No, that's great. That's great. No, listen. Hey, I love when you debate. And by the way,
I'm not a good debater. I don't like debating. I don't think this is a debate.
No. You had Andrew Tate down in the first four. It's all good. Here's the thing. Let me say this to you. Okay, great. I'm gonna go with what you say. Right. So, okay, he could say whatever he wants to say because that's his.
No, I'm not saying that.
What are you saying, man?
I'm not denying the impact that Lil Durk's music might have on street level violence. Okay, but
you're not.
If there is one person,
blame though, you're saying that he's allowed to speak on it, and I'm telling you, listen, it's one thing if you're, hey, okay, you have nothing going on, you're just rapping about what's going on with you in your reality. Lil Durk has signed over $100 million in record deals, and his reality is not what these guys are actually talking about anymore. It's been a long time since then. So right now, what he does, I'm telling you, because I've talked to the mom of the deceased, of the people from the other side. He has a large enough voice that when he says something, it's fanning the fuse. That's what it is. So I always say, why does my name ever get brought up when, okay, you could say you may have been part of the problem at a point, but you stopped. You exited 2017. Then I asked everyone, what about these other people who are still encouraging? There's somebody.
But you were never from there. That's the difference. I think that's like, if we're gonna talk about you versus Lil Durk,
okay,
covering this sort of stuff, like, he's making art. He is telling his story versus you're just covering it. If I think that like there is moral culpability there, I would still put you in a worse position overall than someone who is just basically rapping about their own personal experiences while making art. But obviously still nowhere near as bad as like record labels who also prod and poke and make the situation worse overall, especially because dead or alive, they're still going to profit.
Wait, but I've watched your extensive commentary about what's going on in Ukraine and other places. You're not from there. Why do you choose to? Because you're using a very amateur tactics of like what the actual rappers say, because they're usually saying, "Well, this is like, hey,
because
we're broke."
Well, I'm a commentator, and so are you, right?
Yeah.
When I'm talking about,
do you comment on other things going on in other countries or other? Where are you from, by the way?
I'm from Turkey. I grew up in Turkey.
Okay. Do you comment on things going on outside of that?
Yeah, of course. And I live in America now, and I don't exclusively talk about what's going on in America. I talk about larger narratives. I'm not from Chicago. I've never been to Chicago. I talk about white supremacy. I'm a white person. I'm not a black person, obviously. And yes, I do talk about things that are happening, but my coverage oftentimes is not going to incite further anger. Usually I try to avoid that. That's precisely what I'm saying here. But again, like, let's say someone, I guess I can't even make a comparison with respect to like Ukraine, right? But one thing I always get mad at, and this is a constant, right? People, I call them Naperville kids, okay? There's a lot of white kids in Naperville that, will run around saying, you ain't slide for Vaughn. You ain't slide for Vaughn. And it's like, bro, you live in a fucking McMansion that your mom and dad got, okay? And you are so careless in the way that you are celebrating Black Death, specifically as though it's just for you to consume. It's just content for you to consume when we're talking about fucking, real people dying, okay? And hold on. And that is consistent with my analysis here.
Do you think that that's a byproduct of like my coverage, or do you think it's a byproduct of probably the larger scope of everywhere?
No, it's a much larger. No, it's much larger than your coverage. It's.
I did the Warren Shark for 3 years. I never said when is so and so going to slide for so and so.
No, I'm not. You're missing my point.
Lil Durk said we're going to slide for your mans. Yo, if I ever die, make sure you slide for me.
I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm stating. I don't think you. I don't know why you don't hear me when I say this. This is not about my analysis of your content. If you want to have a conversation with like moral culpability in comparison to you versus Lil Durk, then that's a different conversation. But if we're going to talk about like the larger systemic problems, then of course you are nowhere near as relevant in the field of battle or in the way that people live every day. And their everyday experiences in comparison to like even what record labels are doing. The you ain't slide for Vaughn shit that a random white kid from Naperville says is just a further extension of the way that I think record labels profit off of black violence and black bodies in the streets. I think that it's not good, and there are way larger people. There are way larger faulty actors here than you or Adam 22, or if you're going to talk about people that are sharing their own personal experiences, like the rappers themselves.
Okay, so we're back again to a point of agreement. So I agree with you there. I agree with you wholehearted. I guess where my commentary about, I was like, well, I don't think he's touching deep enough, was that let's be very clear. And I do like Andrew Callahan. He hit me up. He's a very cordial guy. He's a very nice guy. He flew out to New Jersey and I granted him an interview. I had this conversation with even Adam, and Adam was like, well, he said he was blindsided. I said, well, you have to kind of realize what this is. And this is where I was saying to you, right? Because I think that documentary was a really good documentary in the sense of it's going to get you to believe what you need to believe. If you watch that documentary, zero of the accountability would be on the people in these situations. You're going to walk away to say, damn, it's fucked up. They're in these situations, and it's fucked up. Other people are taking advantage of these situations. You don't actually realize and understand the the actual, people who are within these environments and just the crime in general. That if you're gonna do a documentary about Chicago, why we have to the first place I would start. This is where I believe that Andrew Callahan, he was wrong. Like, you can't just show a concert, interview a rapper who never had a hit. No disrespect to him, and then just jump to me and No Jumper. The first thing we gotta understand is why a dude could get caught with like literally a pistol with a fucking switch or a pistol with a 100-round clip on it, and he gets let out tomorrow. Why is Chicago and actually Illinois in reality the place where guns supposedly are policed one of the highest in terms of the highest degree in people compared to New York? However, it's the place where the most guns are smuggled in. So again, most of
they're smuggling it from neighbor states, obviously, because America is not Chicago's not an island on its own, away from everybody else. They're taking them for Indiana.
No, I'm agreeing with you. But what I'm trying to say is that if you're gonna do a documentary on the crime that's happening there, that has basically led into the music, and then the music has led into a culture phenomenon, something that you have popular rappers spurting off from, and media platforms like Akademiks or Adam 22 and No Jumper, you have to start where it really matters. When anyone watched that, and that's what I thought your opinion was shallow, because and I wouldn't say shallow just because you're a shallow-minded person. I think it led you to that opinion.
I mentioned everything that I just talked to you about in that conversation as well when I was live reacting to it, with respect to like material conditions playing a significantly larger role in the way that violence happens in certain communities and not others in an identical capacity. So that's why I'm saying, like, you said that my opinion was shallow, but I think you're hyper focusing on my criticism of you in that video and not necessarily the larger, far more consequential, far more impactful factors at play that I routinely mentioned in that video as well, which is, again, material conditions and the cycle of violence and poverty, poverty-bred violence.
And that could be true. I will just say, and this was my take, right? So again, I feel like we're agreeing again. My take, when I hear your commentary, and your commentary seems to be more focused on the media platforms that was involved in pushing the music and, yes, perpetuating some of the narratives. It may seem like you're absolving other more important structures when, say you talked about it for 10 minutes. I watched the whole clip. I'm playing basketball and I'm listening to you. I listen to you a lot, brother. And I was just like, you kind of skimmed over like all the real societal problems that's going into this. And you're like, yo, not gonna lie. I think you even referred to like, yo, these guys are doing they're like pieces of shit for it. You know what I mean? And I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about the exact terming, but you made it seem like we were the biggest culprits of, maybe not, again, causing all this stuff, but taking advantage of it. And in reality, I've always said, and I'm not going to use this point against you because you've just brought it up in your defense. Me and Adam even talked about this. Again, the biggest, the people who actually benefit most from drill music, from all these deaths, from everything you might consider when it comes to neighborhoods like Chicago, or all the neighborhoods in Chicago, cities like Chicago, is going to be, number one, the record label owners, the executives, the record labels themselves. Then you're going to trickle down and you're going to get to even the rapper. You're going to get to other like conglomerates before you get to the media. The media
no, I don't think so. That's the main difference. Again, I guess them, because I don't think that individual actors and the way that they rap about their own personal experiences is as morally damaging as like other people that are inciting as well. He's inciting too. If you're, look, I don't listen. I don't know the songs you're referencing right now. Like I said, I'm not super familiar with the culture.
I'll extrapolate just.
What's up?
I'll extrapolate for you. So we'll get out of Chicago. So I don't know if you know what's going on in Atlanta. You have the DA who is arresting actual rappers who are not only allegedly committing crimes, but they're rapping about them brazenly and also profiting off them. They're making millions of dollars.
Yeah,
granted,
which should be protected under the First Amendment, by the way. I think that if you're going to put together a RICO case, you can't be using gang signs that people are throwing up as a compounding factor or as a reason alone. Like, obviously, there's more evidence. Like, number one, don't fucking rent a car with your name on it. Unfortunately, don't rent a car with your name on it if that car is going to be used in a drive-by shooting. Okay, but the DA herself. What's up?
Some of the lyrics they're using. They're using a lyric from a rapper named Young Thug. He rapped about, yo, well, you already got the message.
You don't have to say a rapper named Young Thug, bro. I know.
He rapped about shooting somebody's mama's house up. Guess whose mama's house was shot up? His biggest opposition, and that's an actual. You think that's just free speech? So he could rap about, especially if they have tangible proof that he's linked to the person who shot up the person's house.
I think the crime itself. Yeah,
rapping about it brazenly. By the way, here's the thing too, which I gotta commend to the Queen. I don't know if you know her. You know the Queen? No, not the Queen behind you, that's dead. Her name is Fonnie Willis. You gotta show some love, brother. Fonnie Willis, she's a queen. This is exactly what she said. If you're rapping about things that we already have evidence to that matches it, it's going to be an indictment. Like, where do you stop with freedom of speech? So can I get on a record, right? So if I did, I don't know, say I did some crime and I literally get on a record and say exactly what I did, just because it's over an 808 and it matches exact evidence. Keep in mind, none of these things matter until it matches exact evidence. Anything is one thing to be used in an indictment. It's another thing to wholly be used in a court of law to prosecute you. When everybody keeps saying, oh, they're using evidence to charge these guys, there's no actual count on the indictment that said a lyric. These are supporting facts for the counts. They're charged with gang violence. How do you know these people are in a gang? Well, he has the gang tattoo. I know you might want to say that's just art. That might be spray paint, graffiti. I'm sorry, brother. If 20 y'all niggas got but I don't know if you can say nigga on your stream, so my bad.
You can say it.
But if there's 20 people with a gang tattoo, and this is something that's very known, or if you're rapping about certain stuff that's just actual crimes, freedom of speech just stops somewhere. And I know you believe that. You don't think that people could just snitch. Yo, this not even freedom of speech. It's called self-snitching.
Yeah, it is.
If you cheat on your taxes, right?
It is. It is called self-snitching.
Made a song saying,
no, it is called self-snitching. But here's the thing. I get that. But when you are establishing a case, I think the supporting factors, the supporting evidence is infinitely more important than just using rap lyrics. Now, do I think, by the way, you said Fannie Willis is the queen. I'm a little bit more critical. I think that this move to lock up Young Thug, Gunna, and other YSL affiliated rappers, I think that was for publicity. Have they committed crimes? Allegedly, it seems like they have. Okay.
No. Because again, I like to extrapolate because I'd never want to just talk only culture that people be like, oh, we're talking about something he doesn't know. You know, the criminal justice system, my guy. You maybe not particularly in Fulton County, Georgia, but let's be honest. Fonnie Willis isn't listening to an album and be like, yo, indictment. You know this is
no. I understand, but it's a dangerous precedent to set when you're using rap lyrics specifically to tie in other people in a RICO charge, right? Because if you're looking at racketeering and you're saying this is now considered organized crime, if you're saying like YSL is now considered organized crime, is an organized criminal component, I think that does set a dangerous precedent because of the way that rap music is usually just a reflection of people's realities about what they're talking about. All of a sudden, you throw up a gang sign, or all of a sudden you're saying like you're from a particular gang. You might not have actually done anything wrong, but you're just simply saying you're in a gang. But now, if you've rapped about it, you are literally you're literally culpable. And I think that is an unfair way to over prosecute black people when there is already a problem with white supremacy within the criminal justice system. This does not absolve Young Thug and his criminal actions originally, or his continued potential involvement in criminal actions. But I think Gunna is a great example, I would say. I mean, you're locking people up for things that they may have done in the past, and your association in that overarching case is specifically that they were part of the record label, that they were, throwing up signs. Like I think that's a silly way to do it. Free Gunna is what I'm saying.
Hold on. No, well, first of all, you see, I hate to argue on the opposite side of this, but I'm just arguing on the point of facts.
I mean, you did call the DA a queen, so.
Nah, the DA. Hey, listen. If you understand, especially and you ask anybody who really live in Atlanta, crime over the last 5 to 7 years has gotten out of control. It's. I don't want to say there's some loose correlation with rap there.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Now that Young Thug is in jail, I'm sure that, crime has been solved. Like, come on. That has nothing to do with that. It's poverty. Poverty is what causing people to fucking rob other people.
Anybody who lives in Atlanta, if they will actually be honest, right? They don't have to just admit it publicly. Admit it to themselves. The problem in Atlanta is a bunch of rappers who call themselves gangsta has got mad money, mad resources, and think they're above the law. That's the fact. Crime over the years have gotten worse because these guys think they're operating without impunity.
Wait, you think the crime rate in Atlanta has something to do with rappers individually acting with impunity? I don't agree with that. I think when we talk about crime, it's such a larger problem. It's such a larger problem than individual rappers.
It's the only problem. But trust me, them niggas in Atlanta, they're thinking there is no repercussion for how they're moving. You know why this RICO was dropped? They're shooting cops. Every black person or any criminal or anybody who does anything will know you start shooting cops, they're coming after you. These dudes are getting so emboldened, they're shooting police officers. Of course, RICOs are going to come down. If they were only killing people in their inner cities, we've seen. Look at Chicago.
But they popped YSL affiliates for not shooting at cops, but for shooting, other members of their community, like ops.
Cleveland Avenue is one of the worst parts of Atlanta. Bro,
am I wrong? Wait, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you know more. Wait, did they actually catch anyone that was a YSL affiliate for shooting at cops, or was it just other rival rappers and gang members?
That's why the RICO came down. I could Google it now for you. Hold on, I want to make sure you get the cop name right. They injured a cop, right? So if anyone doesn't know, first of all, this DA also is trying to get Trump for election fraud shit. Okay,
yeah,
so
I agree with that. That's good. She should focus on that more.
So she's not just trying to by the way, she's black. She's not just trying to just get niggas.
I know.
She thinks she's staying on a moral high horse. And by the way, I think she's trying to do the Kamala Harris move. She's trying to use this position to get to another position, hopefully to get to politics. Here's the problem that happened. There was a guy whose name is Nut. Okay, he got killed, and before this DA got in the position she got in, she swore to the family, "I'm going to solve that murder." That murder is the quintessential core of this whole YSL indictment. By the way, there's another gang indicted called YFN. Both of their beefs is centered about this one individual that she promised that, "Mom, I'm going to solve that murder." Okay, let's put that to the side. She locked up one group, right? Which was the group of that allegedly was cool with the people that she was going to solve the murder for. But whatever. Then a cop gets shot. He didn't die. And you will see they realize the guy who allegedly did the shooting is part of this quote-unquote YSL and been shooting mad people. So you know what they did? And she did a bold move because people weren't using these gang charges. Because this is how they file RICOs in state level in Georgia. They do the gang charge with a racketeering thing. Nobody was doing it until she says enough is fucking enough. Everybody was getting on Atlanta. Atlanta was never, the crime rate has tripled over the last couple of years. And she said, "I'm dropping these indictments." And trust me, these rappers are outside giving out water, going to church, getting baptized. They're like, they're giving their life to God. They want no more smoke. And you got to thanks to the Queen Fonnie Willis. Sorry. Hey, listen, I know you want to defend these communities, but trust me, it would be someone like me or a family member of mine that would live in these communities. We not jacking the dudes who just shooting up indiscriminately. Once you start shooting a cop, there is no type. Once you're shooting cops, you don't care nothing about the community.
Okay, first of all, some might say that cops are the most violent gang in the way that they deal with these sorts of communities, but that's not the point here. Obviously, they're a part of that. Obviously, they're still very much a part of that system, so that they will get additional protection and a lack of scrutiny when they engage in violent behavior, specifically towards black communities. But like I've mentioned time and time again, and I don't know enough about Atlanta in particular, but I will say that I doubt that the individual actions of rappers themselves is responsible for the Atlanta crime rate, especially because
this name that you guys could Google at a later time. The police officer's name is David Rogers. Okay, he was shot 4 times in the shoulder.
He was shot 6 times while trying to arrest a young Slime Life gang member, according to the warrants. That's what you're looking at, right? Yeah. That's what you're talking about. Yeah, you're talking about one individual act of violence against the cop, and I'm saying that yes, the system comes down to protect its most violent offenders, usually that being cops. So I get why there would be additional consequences. I mean, look, you have Chris Dorner. Are you familiar with Chris Dorner?
Of course I am.
Yeah.
Are you anti-cops? It sounds like you're anti-cops.
What?
It sound like you don't fuck with cops.
I am not a big fan of the police. No.
Listen, I operate in hip hop that usually say fuck 12, but trust me, everybody knows once you start shooting police officers, the shit is over.
No, I understand that. I mean, that's why I mentioned the Dorner example, right? They fucking lit him on fire in a cabin because he killed cops.
No, I know. And
even though he was a cop originally. So no, I get that. My point is that you mentioned the overarching crime rate rising in Atlanta originally in your conversation, and you said that individual rappers that feel like they can operate with impunity, operate above the law, are responsible for that increase in crime. And I'm saying that is so hyper specific and so narrow, and that's not how statistics work. So immediately I'm saying no. I don't think that is.
There's data that supports it. Like, for example, the reason why this RICO came down, they found out the guy who shot the cop. This guy has like 7 to 8 other shootings. He's accused of like 3 to 4 murders. They're realizing like, yo, hey, listen, these guys are tied in with some of these artists or people with money that are allowing and affording them the opportunity to beat the legal system. So that's why they're hitting them with the RICO. That's honestly what it is. Like, this is not no happenstance. Like, they're realizing these guys, by the way, they're also realizing, put like this, you could track the violence based on who's beefing with what rapper. So, okay, great.
But like even before drill music or even before rap, before YSL, was there no crime in Atlanta? Was there no violent crime in Atlanta? Were no cops ever killed in Atlanta or Chicago or any of these other places? Of course there was, right?
No. That's why Chicago is different. They don't really jump down like that with Chicago because it's always been like that with Chicago. Atlanta has been, and again, I'm speaking very like, I almost feel like I'm using colloquials to kind of explain the experience there.
No, but, like, yo, can you answer that though? Can you answer that though before we move on to the next question? Like, do you think crime, especially this kind of violent crime, did not exist in a place like Atlanta before, I don't know, like the popularization of like Atlanta rappers?
Chicago, yes. If we say Chicago, yes. If we say Atlanta, no. I'm telling you, look at the crime rate of Atlanta. I'm telling you, we could Google it right now together.
Wait, am I crazy? I feel like Atlanta crime in Atlanta, Georgia has decreased since 2009, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but that would be consistent with the rest of the country. For the record, this is a media narrative where people constantly talk about like crime being a crime wave, and this is something I talk about quite frequently. I've done a bunch of videos on this, specifically in Los Angeles. I've talked about this. Homicides have increased, certainly, in Los Angeles, for example, and yet property crime has fairly consistently diminished. And this is like not numbers that people are making up. This is the cops, this is their own numbers. So
I feel like you have a distrust for police officers already, which I think we all do. But here's the thing, and this is just undoubtedly. Gang-related violence in Atlanta.
Okay, so not overall crime. You're talking about gang-related violence.
I mean, well, again, obviously, there's going to be more focus, at least within the Black community, on communities where African Americans are, right? So that's usually places where gang violence is more prone to happen. But I know without a doubt, gang violence has increased, and from what I know, overall violence has increased at least since this DA has taken office. Now, you're going back to 2009. Like, again, I don't know what happened since 2009. So if we
No,
just
but
take
that's not
this-
an individual year. That's a consistent drop, as you can see, right? If you're looking at my stream, you can see that that's a consistent drop all the way to 2018, a minor increase, and then a restabilizing.
No, but hear what I'm saying, Hassan. Like, for example, right now, the place that everybody's trying to, like, we hear rappers speaking about this is Philadelphia. Meek Mill, who's a guy who's promoted death and violence and drugs more than anybody else in Philadelphia. He's even said we have to chill out, we have to stop. There's an irrational increase that is due to just like not only gang violence, but also some people believing that the music that they see is relevant and the artists that they see is relevant are also promoting this type of music.
But
I
like,
understand you want to just extrapolate it to be like, oh, that's just a natural trend. Listen, if the people in these communities, and this is what I'm saying, you're looking for shallow.
no, but
shallow.
you said crime increased, but it has decreased, is what I'm saying, and I think that's important.
In Atlanta?
Yeah.
In Philadelphia? What
Yeah.
what areas then? In what areas then? Because again, put like
Overall.
this, things that happen in America that we as Black Americans, we could tell when it's affecting our communities.
You said I was talking about Andrew Tate and I rolled him, right? Remember? Because one of the main components in that conversation was his over-reliance on anecdotes over empirical evidence. Now, we have a tendency to be biased in the way that we interpret things, right? And the media is very good at cutting a narrative. They're very good at cutting a narrative that like crime is on the rise, crime is exploding. But when you look at when you pull yourself out of that for a brief moment, okay, and you think about something even as emotional as like violent crime, you know, I've had friends that have been robbed. You know, it's a very emotional, traumatic experience. I get it, but when you remove yourself from that for a brief moment and think about it with respect to the empirical evidence, you recognize that the media narrative is actually not reflective of the reality itself.
No, I disagree with that, and I know you're trying to say it's anecdotal.
But that's the truth. No, I mean I'm showing you the numbers.
No, because I'm using a specific verbiage. The conversation you had with Andrew Tate, he just wanted to say that niggas could drive more than women. Like that's him. I'm telling you specifically. Like I seen everything. I'm telling you specifically that the reason why everybody is tuning in to what's going on in Philadelphia these days, the reason why Meek Mill in his heyday, right? We're talking about 2012 to 2015. This is probably the height of his career. He wasn't talking about, oh, there's some crazy murder rate in Philadelphia, because the precincts of where it was happening in. And that's the thing you know about a lot. It's not only about, are we just taking Philadelphia as a whole? Are we taking actual gang violence happening in a few particular cities? If you listen to the Queen, Fonnie Willis, she even said it herself. I'll get you the clip if you want me to, where she said violence on Cleveland Ave has increased. What is Cleveland Ave known for? A particular gang. So I get what you're saying, where you're just trying to use Atlanta, but again, most of these influential things that we're talking about is coming from certain precincts.
Get the Atlanta police officer
Wait,
shot multiple times this week.
Is that on your end or is that on my end?
Sorry.
Oh. So yeah, if you try to have a conversation about crime across the board, like you got to have a larger conversation about crime in these areas that you're talking about, whether it be Philadelphia or not. If you reduce it down to one zip code, if you try to hyper focus on one street number, then you're not going to arrive at the larger, clearer picture. Fannie Willis is not the DA of Cleveland Street. She's the DA of Atlanta.
She's focusing on the areas where crime.
No. I know, but here's the issue, right? Here's the issue. The reason why you don't do that, the reason why you don't look at like an individual street, is because when you hyper focus, when you get down to that as your evidence, that is susceptible to a lot of bias takes and selection bias in the identical capacity to you being susceptible to your own anecdotes, like being motivated by your own personal biases that you can't recognize. Because when you sample an individual street, individual streets can be bloody for an extended period of time, and then the violence moves elsewhere, right? Like, that's why you look at the violent crime rate in Atlanta rather than just specifically one area.
Hasan, listen. I could tell, by the way, I think we both went to Rutgers. I don't know if you know. We both went to Rutgers. I graduated with a biomathematics degree, okay? I took theory of probability, all that shit. And I like how you're talking because it kind of harps on my background from that. Fuck that shit, though. There's hoods in every city. That's the point I'm trying to tell you. Yo, put it like this. The city I live in, I know where the violence is going to be at. If it's over here, it's a fucking problem. It's never violence. I know where the violence is going to be at. I still live in Jersey. My headquarters is in Jersey City. My headquarters is in the art district. They have moved out all the ghetto shit blocks away. There's usually not crime where my headquarters is at. I know exactly where it's going to be. So I know you're like, yo, oh no, the violence, you're acting like it's like Casper. Like, oh no, the ghost might pop up here, then there, then there, then there. We just got to look at it though. No, everybody know where the real, yo, let me ask you a question. If I had to
smaller, hyper-specific, localized, selected slivers of crime are susceptible to be cherry-picked, though. That's my point. And that's why you look at the broader crime rate. You look at the crime rate across the board.
If you were the commissioner of police and you were in Chicago, right? Granted, every time when you have one of these meetings, then you know your lieutenant or whoever is telling you, yo, this is what they're doing in South Side Chicago. Historically, where all the niggas is at, historically, the most violent part, are you going to be like, no, just spread out equally. I want a lot of y'all over by like Peoria. I need like you guys on the outskirts. Or are you going to say, if we got 1,500 cops, put 1,000 cops in Southside Chicago, because that's where they're giving it up. Brother, you not racist.
By the way, you're quite literally describing why police operate as an occupying force in these sorts of communities because of that contentious relationship. Police are there to protect and serve. They should be in every neighborhood, and police are not supposed to be the ones solving crime, as they don't actually solve crime, for the record. They don't do a really good job of solving crime at all. So crime, if you and I both understand that crime is not manifesting as a consequence of, like, you know, black people living in a specific area, right? I don't think you meant that. And instead a product of material conditions, right? Then the solution to crime is not about over-policing black neighborhoods, especially considering that black neighborhoods have been over-policed. Chicago's a really good example of this. I'm glad you brought up Chicago once again. So there was a plot of land in the south side of Chicago that was supposed to be sold. And the mayor at the time, Rahm Emanuel, wanted to turn around and turn this into a police academy. But what the community actually wanted was for that plot of land to be sold so that they could get more funding for their school system. CPS is incredibly underfunded. Time and time again, studies have shown that after school programs and basketball leagues and things of that nature have led to an immediate and recognizable drop in crime, specifically in the neighborhoods that they implement these sorts of programs. So why the fuck do these rich white people still continue to avoid that reality and try to over-police black communities? That's not the way you actually solve crime. If you want to solve crime, I want to solve crime. I don't want crime, right? You don't want it either. Then do the right things, right? That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to actually tackle the problem.
True though, Hasan, come on, yo, Hasan, Hasan, put like this, yo, like, I know you're so intellectually, like, you know, advanced that you understand that. By the way, we're not even disagreeing. It's like you're trying to say, no, all you guys got to do is give them more resources and back out the cops. What? Yo, you back out the cops in Southside Chicago and you get them more resources? Yeah, it's gonna be more deaths. You can't believe that. Hey, listen,
Does not.
that might be
I don't believe that.
No, that's a long-term perspective to say, hey, listen, this is a real reason why crime is happening, which I agree. Usually anywhere where crime is happening is because they are underserved with resources and they don't have
I didn't say airdrop Dracos in a fucking O block and leave the cops. I meant like resources like school programs that I just mentioned, social safety nets.
Why would you take the police out? So listen, in Chicago, you talk to anybody who's on, like, you know, you got to talk to like an extra like killer or street dude. They're going to be like, yo, they feel they have to have a gun. Everybody's rolling around with illegal guns. And you're trying to say, let's bring the cops out of there. Just bring some more YMCAs and basketball courts and they're going to get along. What?
I unironically do believe that over policing, which has increased over the course of the past 50 fucking years and has, I mean, obviously the overarching crime rate has dropped regardless of wherever you go, but over policing has not been a solution to the crime in Chicago. So why not try something a little bit different? I'm not saying don't have a single cop in Chicago. What I'm saying is if you want to have cops in Chicago, I'm not a police abolitionist in the sense that I do understand that there is still going to be a group of individuals that are, whether democratically organized or not, maintaining the presence of law and order, okay, and catching pedophiles and shit, okay? Like, I think that you need that. You need and solve crimes. You need detectives. So that's number one. What I'm stating is over-policing has demonstrably not worked. Social services have demonstrably worked universally, not just in Chicago, but in all of these other places. So instead of having a hyper-militarized group of individuals that are not even from the streets that they're patrolling, okay, have people from said community or have a police unit that is accountable to the community in some meaningful capacity, okay, while also simultaneously taking some of these resources and putting them back into social safety nets and school programs.
Yo, I'm going to shock you with this statement. And by the way, anybody in my chat don't agree. And listen, this is why I'm an independent thinker. Y'all can disagree. We can argue it from here on till the rest of the time. This is why the only person who had a real solution for Chicago that could have possibly worked is motherfucking Donald Trump. What? I'm serious. Revenge killing, bro. Nobody cared about no social services and after school basketball program when people talking about they smoking on their dead bro, this is revenge violence consistently perpetuating itself. There's nothing you could give other than hard policing of removing those individuals who are more prone to that from that environment. Bro, they're not gonna just stop and be like, oh,
wait, what do you mean? Individuals are not prone, but like,
stop killing each other. What?
Okay, but you don't think that like the people living in these neighborhoods are like inherently more violent, right? You don't think that. Why are they that way? Why does it manifest? Why does that violence manifest itself in the way that it does?
Say again?
Why does the violence that you speak of manifest itself in the way that it does?
Because it's cyclical. Because it's of course the initial reason is because of the societal effect on their family lives or them as people in terms of lack of resources and shit like that. But once violence starts, right, you're usually seeing, like, for example, when Lil Durk, like, again, I'm using anecdotal shit to kind of like prove my point, but I have a bunch of them. When someone dies, you're going to see a weekend of shooting. If someone gets hurt, it's a lot of revenge stuff. It's literally just warfare. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily saying it's obviously, again, I'm not disagreeing with you in the sense of...
Why do you think white people in Connecticut don't handle it that way? Do you think that there is an inherent reason for it? Or do you think it's because those guys in like middle-class America have a significantly better material condition than the dudes you're talking about who are living in literally like third world conditions in the wealthiest nation on earth?
Hold on. Let me tell you this. If white dudes in Connecticut, if you give me about 30 of them, and all of their brothers or sisters was a victim of gun violence, maybe half of them will be like, you know what, I'm going to seek therapy. I'm going to try to, move on from this. The other them, they're picking up a stick, bro. They're going to have some
you literally, you misunderstood my point. My point is if you're in a better position overall, if you are subjected to better material conditions overall, you're not going to find yourself in a cycle of violence anyway. So when I talk about it, I talk about literally fixing the material conditions because I want the underlying problem to go away.
Okay, but how do you stop the cycle of violence? Okay, so you build the best infrastructure.
I never said there should be no police whatsoever, by the way. I do understand that if someone commits a crime, yes, the police should go in there, stop it, make sure that the person is no longer committing crime. I understand that. That's like pretty basic stuff.
I don't know, like, I look at the comm stats when it comes to like, places like Cook County and compared to other places. The amount of gun violence that police supposedly have to respond to or properly investigate, they have given up. Especially even after, remember what happened in Baltimore when people just
Great, I'm glad we're giving them billions of fucking dollars, so they're just like, yeah, fuck it, like we're giving up.
No. Hold on. Okay,
They need more money, I think.
No, I'm with you on that. But you're saying less police when we have also demonized the police for doing what they need to do to stop it.
No, they're not doing what they need to do to stop it. Like Derek Chauvin wasn't doing what he needed to do to stop George Floyd, right? You understand that. You agree with me on that, I hope.
Got to do is shooting up the block or doing gang violence like how most of them niggas in Chicago is doing, bro.
But they're not doing that. Look, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and cops are a fucking hammer. They are dealt with a problem that they are incapable of solving.
No, I'll give you that point. We do need better cops, and I don't want to sit here and act like I'm saying every cop is perfect. My whole point is that, listen, I'm with you, and I think there's a lot of moments and points of agreement. Like I'm saying, yo, you're right. Like we do need the better infrastructure and all these other things to stop the cycle because you're right. People in Connecticut, they're not doing that. But we also have to be very aggressive and very intentional in the approach to let people know that, hey, listen, violence can't beget more violence because that's what I realized.
I agree. That's why cops are a terrible fucking method of solving violence.
So how do you stop more violence when people are moving off road?
But you just said violence doesn't beget more violence, and now you're saying cops are the only way to stop violence.
No.
You and I are in agreement. Cops are a violent force.
Yo, because Hasan, somebody kills your brother, you're picking up a gun. Maybe. Or you're more likely to. Especially if you have nothing to live for or that's a way of life, you're probably going to do it. What I'm trying to say is that you have to stop the cycle even if you improve the conditions. Because put it like this, when these people are talking to me, they're saying this, like that group or that gang killed my cousin. I don't give a fuck what they did. Bro, it's the same thing with war. We watch war on a... Oh my God.
Okay. I have a quick question for you, right? Let's say in your younger days, would you ever throw hands? Like if someone, try to fuck with you?
I would if it came to
okay. You probably won't do that right now, would you?
Depend on.
And I'm not saying this to be like, oh, you're a pussy or anything. There's a larger point here.
It depends on what level, but also if I could avoid it, of course I would not. Because, I have a lot more things going on.
Exactly. That's my point. You have way too much to fucking lose for getting into a dumbass scuffle. And if people have more to lose, then they're less likely to act in violent ways. But if you have no fucking future prospects, if your school system is completely fundamentally broken, the teachers don't want to fucking be there, you're still working on like textbooks that are from 1957, okay? And you see so much violence happening as a consequence in every fucking facet of your life. And you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Of course I'm going to pick up a gun and go and do whatever the fuck I can to survive. Okay, like that's the point. And if you're born into that environment, it is very difficult to get out of it. And the only way to actually get out of it is to make sure that you have something to lose, to make sure that you have a future prospect, to make sure that these kids are being educated, to make sure that they have shit to fucking do.
Here's the biggest thing, though. You see, education won't do it. The majority of these people, and this is why the feds, which they've rarely ever really fucked with Chicago like that, unless it's super drug stuff, they went into O-Block. And what O-Block is a low-income housing option. Mm-hmm. And whatever you're saying with that, by the way, at least I know in Jersey, I don't know if you still live in Jersey, but
no, I live in Los Angeles.
Okay, if you build a high rise, if you build anything, usually they require you have some option for people of low income housing.
Yeah, those policies, unfortunately, do not meet the demands of the market, though. But yes, I'm familiar. They do it in New York, too.
But hold on. When you have inherently a bunch of people who are living in low-income housing, despite the opportunity, they're more prone to just be at risk of throwing it all away just off a petty disagreement. You're living pretty good. You're going to think about it 5 times. So would I. But these people, you're living in O Block, and this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about people who are living in mansions. Like, I don't think,
but,
you know what I mean?
That's
like,
why I said
right
raise
now,
the material, raise the fucking minimum entry level for existence for all Americans. We have the wealth to be able to do so. We're the wealthiest nation on earth. And you still got motherfuckers living in Alabama, specifically in black neighborhoods with no working sewage system. Like, that's disrespectful as fuck. That's completely ridiculous. You literally still have plantations in Angola. The Louisiana State Penitentiary operates like a fucking plantation. It's named after a plantation. Like, this is not a mistake. This is why I get so fucking mad whenever people try to deny white supremacy's permanent fucking institutional power in American development. There's a reason for all of this, okay? That's why motherfuckers like Tim Pool, who you said you watch, are regularly serving that same institutional, oppressive hierarchy by denying the reality of white supremacy in societal development.
Okay. So then I ask you, right? Because, and by the way, I like watching both of y'all because I think y'all are rational, and I see a lot of.
He is not rational. He is not even remotely rational. But anyway, let's.
Okay. All right. So when you're also kind of borderline teetering on what would most people say is socialism, my guy. Like,
wait, what? Let me tell you something about myself then. Yeah, I don't give a shit. I don't think that the capitalist organization of the economy is adequate. We don't need to have that conversation. But yes,
no, there's no way you believe in that. Hey, listen, I'm one of the biggest pocket watchers ever known to man. Like, I've already summed you up in what you make. And I sum up rappers, I sum up entertainers. Salute to my guy Kai. I just did a whole little rap sheet of his thing.
Socialism is not a poverty cult. You don't have to be poor to be socialist, even though you can still advocate for those who are less fortunate than you. Russell Brand once famously said,
the majority of your luxuries just to improve the lives of other people who may not be trying or working hard.
That's not socialism. That is a bastardized American interpretation of socialism. Russell Brand once famously said, when I was poor and I advocated for socialism, they said I was jealous of the wealthy's success. Now I'm wealthy and I advocate for socialism, and they say I'm a hypocrite. Turns out they just don't want me advocating for socialism. They don't want me speaking out on behalf of the working class, and that is the truth.
You're a hypocrite. They're going to say you're a hypocrite because
they say it all the time. I don't give a shit.
Even if there isn't an overarching or some type of policy that could just like advocate or just gonna make this happen, you have acquired a lot of wealth. Why don't you start distributing your wealth?
I do, but socialism is not about wealth distribution. Even though I do that, but socialism is not about wealth distribution. Again, like I said, that's a misunderstanding. And people also have fucking a lot of dummies have actually canceled me over fucking buying a house and shit because they're stupid. But socialism is at its very roots about making sure that you earn what you fucking make. Okay?
Hold on. You would move 5 niggas from Skid Row in that beautiful house. I've seen it on Google. You know you would not do it. And socialism would not be proud.
Wait, what? That's not social. Wait, what the fuck? That's... Yeah, of course I wouldn't do that because that has nothing to do with socialism. Why would I fucking do that? I can't individually solve problems. If personal charity was a foolproof method of solving the underlying problems that exist in society, and anyone who gave money to charities was deemed a socialist, then Jeff Bezos would be the biggest fucking socialist around. It's not about that at all. It's about how you make your money. Do you have capital? Do you or it's more so about earning a larger percentage of earning a larger percentage of the wages that you are creating for the company that you work for. That's what socialism is about. It's about getting the adequate pay and autonomy that you have in your life.
I would be down to give away, the majority of my resources that I've acquired by working so hard if I seen Hasan do it first. If you were like, yo, listen, man.
Okay, well, you should start then.
And I saw you with a nice You know what I mean? A nice tent that you were kicking it with. You know what I mean? With like, you know what I mean? Like just one of those little fans with the battery. And I'm like, yo, if he's doing that, maybe I should sell my Lamborghini.
Okay, but you're missing the point because I don't want anyone to be living inside of tents. And I think that we have enough money as we collectively create enough wealth to ensure that. I have no problem paying my taxes. You earlier asked if I like dodge taxes or anything. I have no problem paying my taxes. I pay 55% or something like that. I live in Los Angeles. You know what I mean? I pay the highest percentage.
You need some tax breaks though. You're working inside your house.
No,
I know you.
So no, not at all. No. But it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. What I'm trying to say is that I don't do that. But what I'm trying to say is I would rather, I have no issue paying higher percentage of taxes even now. But there are also a lot of untaxed income out there that billionaires and millionaires take advantage of. Okay. Sure. Like, for example, there's a concept called buy, borrow, die. These guys, instead of paying taxes, they'll just assume debt, right? They'll go to a bank and they'll say, I have $7 billion in assets. Give me $100 million right now. That's how Elon Musk, for example, just bought Twitter. He took $40 billion from a bunch of different banks. So he took that as a loan. Now all he needs to do is pay off the incredibly tiny interest rate on that loan on this wonderful financial package that they afford him that they would never afford to the random Joe Schmo when you try to get a fucking loan. So that's how they pay. That's what they do rather than pay taxes, because now that's debt. Okay, but now he has debt that he can use against all the taxes that he has to pay. Well, it's called buy, borrow, die.
No, and I believe you on that. So that's where I would ask you. It feels like you're just like most Americans, and not necessarily believing in what people would say is socialism. You just believe that the richest people of this country should actually not be allowed to weasel and squeeze themselves out of not paying what's.
Yeah, if Jeff Bezos paid my tax percentage, we would have like 90% of the problems would be fucking diminished. Okay, but no one does that. No one even in my financial predicament even does that, except for like, I guess, Twitch streamers that I do know that don't give a shit and don't try to like shelter their assets or anything. But that's not even socialism. Socialism is about the means of production. Like when you make content on your own, right? You're your own boss, right? Have you ever worked a job under someone else though before you started doing this?
Of course. Well, I mean, so my last job was at Verizon Wireless in Branchburg, New Jersey.
Perfect. So you worked at Verizon, right? And you had no control over your own schedule. You had no control over your own life. You had no control over what you fucking wear. They made you wear those ugly ass red polo tees, right?
It was, so I worked at a corporate company, so it was Blackwood with the red Verizon letter.
Okay, but regardless, like you had no meaningful control over your own life. Yes, socialism is about ensuring that you at least have somewhat of a say, democratizing the workplace, and have somewhat of a say and more autonomy over the profits that you're generating for the company. That's what socialism is about. It has nothing to do with like fucking, I don't know, just being poor and living in a tent with a fan or anything like that.
Yeah, it's so, and I don't think anyone's a bad human in terms of saying that, oh no, people deserve to like be homeless, right? So like me intuitively believes that everyone should have some type of, especially when you're in the United States, which we've seen the extremes of wealth that we're like, well, shoot, maybe he could afford less than owning a fucking island. Everybody in fucking Skid Row could just have a place to like lay their head other than outside. I don't think no one thinks that. I then ask you though, in terms of meritocracy, do you believe that a lot of what you have been afforded in life, because I do, I believe that I've made sacrifices, I've worked harder, I've done the necessary things to try to get ahead. And I'm not gonna lie, this is one of the reasons I can't get down with that. Is like, Robbie, like if I didn't really have to do shit to at least have a menial, decent life, and everybody else were gonna have a downgrade and nobody else was gonna have like all these great things, I'm like, fuck it, I'm not gonna do shit.
No, I don't think meritocracy is real. I'll just tell you right now, I'm a profoundly successful individual, and I don't think meritocracy is real. I think it's a lie that they tell people, because we have no way We have no way of understanding whether a kid that was born in Oblak or a kid born in like fucking Mongolia has the capacity to achieve the same level of success that we did because they were born in a fucking different spawn point. So I think that level of probability plays a gigantic role in people's developments, and things have gone right in your life, right? I'm not diminishing your hard work. I'm sure you work very hard. I work very hard. I fucking, I stream for 10 hours a day. I work a lot harder than some of my peers. Okay. But yeah, I've made sacrifices. I've worked very hard, but ultimately
there's people who aren't as eloquent, who aren't as rational. And you could be like, oh no, this is a product of something else. But you are special in a sense because, okay, let's not think about the people who don't even have the opportunity to do what you're doing.
Yeah, but they could.
No. How many streamers get online every day and they're trying to break down certain shit that might be congruent to what you're doing, but they don't have the same result? You're doing something better than them, brother.
I understand that. I understand that. However, there should still be a base level of security afforded to every single person so they can, if they wish to do so, maximize on their potential. And right now, with the current system that we exist under, we do not do that. A lot of people's potential is robbed because of the zip code that they're born into. And I think that needs to change. And as a matter of fact, societies that do have better social safety nets have higher upward social mobility. That's why you look at European countries, European nations, and you see far better success in terms of upward social mobility in countries like that because they have social safety nets that are more adequate. If you are not fearful that your health, your well-being is tied to your employment like you do here in the United States of America, you can make lateral moves. You can go and switch a job without fear that, like, listen, if I switch a job and that job doesn't offer me health care, I'm fucked if I get sick. You know what I mean? That's a huge L that Americans take on a daily basis. Okay? Same with college. Plenty of people in plenty of other countries can get that education. Some countries will literally pay you to go to college. In America, you got to go to fucking Afghanistan and get your dick blown off so you can get that shit paid for because education is the only viable method of upward social mobility. It's fucking ridiculous.
Wait, you went to Rutgers as well. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Rutgers. I went to University of Miami and then I went to Rutgers. And I was able to do that because What?
What were you studying?
Political science.
Political science.
Yeah.
This is where, like, I also fall off that bandwagon, and I think about people like you, and definitely people like me, right? So I went and I have a biomathematics degree. You have a political science degree. There's people who go to college who literally skate by, and yes, they may accrue some debt, but they're there for their experience. And a lot of times, back in the day, Sally Mae or maybe Navy Inter or whatever the hell, or maybe some like,
GI Bill?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that would be paid for. I'm talking about people rack up charges like that their either parents sign off for, or they look at like, I'll pay back later in life. And then they'll go to college and not even take anything challenging. I'm actually a double major. So it's biomathematics.
Right, me too, in communication as well, but that's bullshit degree on top of political science, which is also bullshit. Exactly.
Sociology is my second degree. Brother, so you're telling me, I used to go to sociology drunk, never really paid attention, never studied for shit. I had a 3.8 in that shit. I got like 1C and 1B. Anyway, here's the thing. You want me to believe that meritocracy doesn't exist when I knew how hard I had to work for the degree, even though I didn't use it. Granted, I didn't use it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by a math degree. And I'm just extrapolating to other people. In life, you're going to get what you deserve, what you work for. And if we push a message
that's not true. I'll tell you the counter to that. You think the parent of 3 children in Oklahoma that's working for $30,000 a year as a teacher is not fucking working hard? She has to come back from school and then go do Uber deliveries in order to make ends meet. That person is working just as hard as you, if not way harder. But we have no way of rewarding those people, and we don't see those people. There are plenty of people that are infinitely hardworking, immensely hardworking, that do not get the adequate compensation for their labor. That doesn't mean that they're not working hard or working smart. They're doing all of that. The idea that you're going to succeed, I think, is still absolutely reliant on factors that are completely outside of our control. And I say that as someone who is immensely successful. I said it as someone who is I recognize my own success, and I also recognize a privilege that allowed me to get to this level. And I want to make sure that other people can also. They're not going to be as successful as me, but if they want to, they should be able to have the opportunities.
Let me just stop you right there. Okay, for your audience and mine, let me give you my story. I was born in Spanish Town, Jamaica. There's videos until I was 10, 11 years old running around with barefoot in a place called Clarendon, Jamaica. I lived in a place called Grantham, right? It's the most unlikely story that I'm here. My mom came up here after breaking up with my father, and she worked 3 jobs. Never had a car. She walked from place to place, took buses. She never had nothing. What she instilled in us, and this is why, like, I always come to America and listen to people bitch about this shit. Be like, yo, y'all don't even know y'all don't really know the shit that's bad. When she came over here, the reason why of course, like the dream of being a doctor, everybody wanted to do, but the reason why I got a biomathematics degree is because I saw my mom work 3 jobs.
Wait, how rich is your mom now?
Well, I retired her.
Okay, so she didn't actually, so she worked 3 jobs and barely made ends meet, but she worked really fucking hard, but she's not wealthy. So why do you think that there's such a concept as meritocracy then?
It's opportunity, and it's what you put into it. Yes,
You think she didn't put enough?
Disadvantage. Hold on, she had a disadvantage. So when she came from Jamaica, she was a teacher. When you come from a third world country with a teaching degree, you have to go to college here again. She went to Felician College, which it's in Jersey. Then she went to Teachers College again. So she did what she was a teacher for damn near 10 years.
So she worked that hard, and yet she still didn't get millions of dollars.
No, hold on. But hear what I'm trying to say, because again, that experience was her getting here. You know what that instilled in us after we seen our mom do that? Ain't nobody ever work harder than me. You can't name a motherfucker who work harder than me.
I know, but your starting point was way more fortunate than your mom because of all of her actions. You're making the point that I'm making as well. I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for my parents who worked hard, my parents who were relatively affluent when I was growing up, that afforded me the best education possible.
Your starting point is based on your parents. For example, you know why my mom was in that
and you have no control over that. That's my point. Yeah, that is literally my point. My point is you have no control over your starting point, and that's a huge component. That's why there are plenty of studies conducted on this as well. Your zip code.
I never said it's a fair race. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's not fair, and I want to make it more fair. Is what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the equality of outcome. I'm talking about the equality of equality of opportunity, which is a fundamental American right.
If you don't make it, you have to push the ball forward for someone else. My mom could have never got to where she was coming from. She was battling for censorship half the time she was here, so she could have never really made it.
Yeah, we should fix that. We should fix that. That's a thing that I advocate for, by the way.
And I agree as well. But what I'm trying to say is that the story of America, and when we act like, oh no, there is like a bunch of excuses that people can fall on. My bad, my monitor. Okay, bunch of excuses people can fall on. My mom brought the baton to a certain level, and it's the same thing. If your parents is from anything, granted, I feel like you're using survivor's remorse. Like,
no, you're using survivor's bias. I don't have remorse. I'm happy. I love my life. I recognize my privilege. Okay, but I'm not like gonna apologize for it. I'm not like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. No, fuck that. I work hard every fucking day, and I'm very fortunate. But I recognize how fortunate I am, and I also recognize how unfortunate other people are. And I want to live in a fucking world where everyone, at the very least, has an equality of opportunity, true equality of opportunity. I'm not talking about equality of outcome. I'm not saying like, oh, you work this hard, I work that hard, everyone should get paid the same. I've never advocated for that whatsoever. I'm simply stating that at its core, there are plenty of people who are fucked over from the starting point. They just have bad RNG, and they have a bad starting point, and they have a bunch of horrible things that happen to them throughout their lives, which they cannot overcome. And I do think that the human condition is awesome, and they could potentially, if given different circumstances, a different set of circumstances, they could improve their living conditions. But there are a lot of rich people that don't want to allow that to happen because they've made it. They're like, fuck you, I got mine. I'm going to kick the fucking ladder down behind myself. Your mom could have been in a way better situation overall if there was a better transitioning program from Jamaica to the United States of America. If she didn't have to struggle, she never should have worked 3 fucking jobs. I think that, and she should have always been able to make a living wage across the board regardless.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm gonna call you your bullshit here. Listen, I'm going to ask you a question. You're probably going to deny it, but I know intuitively you believe in nepotism.
Wait, let's hear it.
You absolutely believe in nepotism, correct?
What do you mean, believe in nepotism? No, I think that nepotism is only a problem because of the current system that we exist under. That's the only fucking way that we can actually get a job. Like, after college, I went in to apply. I graduated with a 3.85, right? Double major. You're supposed to be able to get in at least to like get in the door at any of these fucking companies or any of these to get an interview. No, all that was afforded to me was fucking selling insurance. Okay, that's all I had. It was available to me. I went in and I did all these fucking I did all these interviews, and it was all about selling life insurance to my fucking friends and family. Okay, I am a beneficiary of nepotism that still also plays a role into the privilege that I have. I went in and I worked for my uncle. He had a 26-person startup called the Young Turks. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've seen their videos, right? They didn't have anyone working doing biz dev shit at the time. I didn't know anything, but I was a go-getter. I was hungry and I didn't have any money. So I was like, fuck it. This is the only job I can have. And maybe I can develop like a larger media role eventually. Okay? This is something that I admit all the fucking time. But obviously, I want to make sure that every other person at least doesn't even have to fucking rely on family members so that they can truly unlock their potential.
And this is where, I'm going to quote your arch enemy, which, I mean.
My arch enemy? Who's my arch enemy? I don't have any enemies. There are like irrelevant random people that.
Like, come on, man, Andrew Tate. I'm going to quote him. This world we live in is player versus player. And what I mean by player versus player is like, number one, nepotism exists, right? Which means you're working hard for you and your family tree and your family line, and whatever resources you gain in this lifetime, you will probably pass on those privileges and luxuries to your offspring or somehow to your family who will be in a more privileged position.
I don't think this world is PvP, honestly. I think that that's capitalist dogma is what I call it. We think that we live in a cruel world where everyone is motivated by self-interest, sure, but there's so many collaborative components, whether it be your own family, whether it be your own community, whether it be your close friends, that play a significant role in societal development, and our education from the start has led us to think that it's a zero-sum game when it's never been a zero-sum game. It's always been done through cooperation. There has never been a single person that's ever succeeded without help from others. They might have unfairly or fairly compensated them for that labor, but individuals do not make champions, okay? They rely on the strength of others. And united, we achieve such profound accomplishments. No one's building a fucking skyscraper on their own.
Okay, and by the way, I'm arguing a point that honestly, just like, for the benefit of people like me, like we want to believe you, but like, and by the way, we want that to be true, but we just know that's not true. Like in just how we grow up, like we obviously want, every human that gets born this year to have the same opportunity to make it in whatever realm, and it should be off of. Not only should they be entitled to a minimum level of living, but they should be able to achieve whatever they want to achieve based on their work ethic, this and third, within their lifetime. But that's just not true. And I think that's not true. And when it comes to like, put it like this, well, if you believe that, I would then I'm gonna throw a fastball at you, or maybe a curveball. Do you believe in reparations? Because
I do, yeah, 100%.
So you believe, I mean,
what, you don't believe in reparations?
I I'm not saying I necessarily do. I just can't see people people giving it. I'm gonna be
Wait,
honest.
you don't believe in reparations?
No, it's not necessarily say I don't believe in it. I say I can't believe. I don't think that the people in power will ever concede to that.
Yeah, but
So
who cares? Who cares? Yeah, those guys are fucking assholes. I'm talking about you. It's you and me right now. We're having a conversation. Do you think reparations are fair or not?
no, yeah, but I'm
Okay.
not. Also, no. The reason why I'm also not quick to jump to just saying that because a lot of people use that as the excuse. Like, oh, okay, we should be awarded with certain shit. So you know what I mean? Until it happens,
I don't think it's an award, by the way. I don't think it's a reward. I think it's restitution. It is fair. It is just. It's robbery.
Too crazy. Let's not do like. There's certain people who live and die on. Well, until I get what's owed to me, I'm not going to continue and strive forward by doing more work or doing whatever. In reality, you get left behind. You know what I mean? Because number one, like this is pretty much as tangible at this point as the motherfucking, as Bigfoot. Like, has there really been any substantial conversations that it's even going like, I mean, it's we've seen certain things enter like, in terms of being a bill to like, give reparations, but it's nothing really ever tangible that came out of this. You know what I mean? It's really kind of all of
America did give reparations. Do you know that? America actually did give reparations.
Who?
In the aftermath of the abolition of slavery. They gave it to slave owners. They lied to black people, and they said that black people would get reparations. That never happened, but they gave reparations to slave owners. That should tell you about what is just in this society, right?
Okay, so and then we get to specifics. I talked to this person who, salute to him. He's a brilliant guy. His name is Tariq Nasheed. You ever heard of him? Maybe
Tariq Nasheed. I'm very familiar with his work. Yes.
You probably don't fuck with him either, right?
I mean,
but
he's an interesting guy.
He goes hard for the
ADOS movement.
Yeah, the ADOS movement, and he believes in reparations.
I think in the eyes of a white supremacist society, it doesn't matter if you're an immediate descendant of slave or not. I have a lot of African first generation friends that may even come here and assume that like racist white people or racist people in general are going to say, oh, well, you're an African migrant, so you're in a different situation. It's like, nope. In the eyes of a lot of racist people, they just don't discriminate between whether you're a first generation black person or not. You're just black. So I think that white supremacy impacts black people regardless of their original material conditions and how they got here.
And by the way, like, even harping back to your question about if I believe in reparations, again, I was born in Jamaica, which is Jamaica's a colony of, the UK. We've been like the Queen and others have been, it's on our currencies, on a lot of things, at least odes to her.
That's slated to change. Jamaica's making an initiative to leave the Commonwealth.
No, of course. Like, we've been on that for a little bit. But, however, you know what I mean? It's like, do we feel like we would be more well off if, like, say Britain was like, yo, here's this fucking check for every one of you guys who are, native and born to the island that could possibly put you in a better situation, and which would be a minuscule part of, like, all of the oppression and all of the...
Yes.
Like... I'm with that.
You would be immediately better off right off the jump. You would be better off. However, the economic calculation of reparations is a difficult one. I'll admit, but that's the bare minimum. Like giving immediate financial restitution, immediate financial compensation for some of these wrongs is just a starting point. As Malcolm X said, as Malcolm X once famously said. Like white supremacy is like being stabbed in the back with a knife. Okay. Some people want to fucking pull out the knife a little bit. Most people are arguing whether you want to pull out the knife, 10%, 20%, but that's not how this works. You have to pull out the knife and start mending the wound, start tending to that wound. And most white people don't even want to talk about the knife's existence to begin with. So there are varying degrees of blindness to the historical impact of slavery, but reparations is just pulling out the knife.
Hey, no. I agree with you, but that calculation is also put like this. The reason why someone like me, as opposed to like Tariq, right? Like Tariq is pushing, he has a whole movement. He's pushing for what that would look like. What I tell people of color, and I tell people, especially black people, especially like, people who might be immigrants like me, is like, hey, listen, check this out. If you sit here and you have this excuse like, yo, hey, we're waiting for what we're owed, you're going to be left behind. Because
I don't think people wait. I don't think people like. I don't believe that people, because people need to survive, right? I don't think people are being held back because they are waiting for reparations.
No, if you're believing in movements that's turned this into some tangible thing, like if like a lot of stuff with Tariq Nasheed, it's like, yo, hey, once we get here, then it happens, bro. I just tell people, I'm like, yo, keep doing your thing. Hopefully, people realize, like, which usually it's never happened in society where someone just admits their own wrong or admonishes himself. But even if it's like, it's held by somebody else and they're like, okay, cool, we will do this in reparations, it should be as much as is not only owed and deserved and this and third. Just don't fucking wait for it, man. And that's my whole thing. You get what I mean? So
I just don't think anyone's actually just sitting around waiting for reparations. Like I've never met someone that's like, I'm not actually going to work today because my reparations check is going to come in the mail eventually. I think most black people are understandably pessimistic about a white supremacist society to do that, to be like, oh, one day reparations is going to happen.
I think some people also use